Hello. I'm gonna try to make this like a vlog and a haul video. I went to today. I dropped by a comic book store looking for a comic for this week that I couldn't find it at my regular store, and it wasn't there at this other store I went to, which was Things from Another World. There's 3 Things for Another World shops in my general area, but I went to the one that's relatively close to work. I was looking for Death Sentence, a new sort of indie superhero book. I assume a miniseries, but anyway, I couldn't find it at either store. But once you're in a comic book store, it's hard not to buy something. And they had these grab bags, and unfortunately I've already opened them. I tried videotaping this earlier, it didn't go too well, but I had already opened them. And so the thing about the grab bags is you can't really tell what's in them. Like, one had Superboy on one side and Superman on the other side. This blue Superman, who I'm completely not familiar with. I'm assuming this Superboy looks like it's from like 1979, 1980, and it still has that old-fashioned Superboy, Superman look around it, the old-fashioned DC look. So anyway, I grabbed 3 of these grab bags. The other grab bags all had Swamp Thing covers showing. And amazingly, the Swamp Thing grab bags just had all Swamp Things in them. Swamp Things from the 90s that I had not read before. So that's fun. I think there were about 10 comics per grab bag, and each grab bag cost $5, so it was about 50 cents a comic book. So anyway, when I first started on YouTube, I think my very first video was an unboxing. And then I did some reviews and some showing comics and some hauls. They were all pretty much random hauls, and this is kind of a random haul. A lot of people, so it looks like I'm getting Superboy here from different eras. A lot of people, oh, this looks really bad. Superboy and the Ravers. A lot of people that I watch don't like haul videos. Like, some people just like reviews, and then there are some people who just like hauls, I think, aren't so keen on the reviews. But I like both, actually. I think I watch more reviews now because I'm actually just listening to them. You don't have to look at them visually most of the time, and you can get other stuff done. But when I have time, or just when there are hauls by people who are particularly my friends, this must be early 90s. Is this before or after the classic James Robinson Starman run? I don't know. It's by Strazewski. That's not the same as... Yeah, Lee Strazewski as the writer. Never heard of him. These came in along with the Superboys. I think 4 Starmans. That's kind of an interesting cover. So, might be fun sometime to just read these. But really it was that I wanted to get something, and I'd never ever done a grab bag before. Turned out better than I thought it would, actually. But this blue Superman looks pretty bad. Although it's drawn by Friends, Ron Friends, I assume. I like his art, so that might be fun. So anyway, yeah, I like hauls. I like watching people's hauls, and I think the reason why they're interesting is because in regular life, who cares what you got at a comic book shop? But here in this YouTube comic book life, we actually care what each other bought, what our comic book shopping experience was like. So I don't think I'm going to read off all these numbers. When I looked at them before, they were either written by someone named Wheeler, Doug Wheeler, who I completely have not heard of, and a lot drawn by Pat Broderick, who is an artist who goes back quite a ways, and I've heard of him. Or this is Doug Wheeler and Tom Yates. That could be good. I like Tom Yates. Or they are written by Nancy Collins, who was a a horror writer who was popular in the early 90s. She wrote vampire novels, and I guess she got into writing comic books too. I think she had a kind of exciting action vampire hero named Sonya Blue. I'm really rambling here. So I think the reason these hauls may seem pointless sometimes, but it's kind of sharing an experience, and I enjoy it. And sometimes you see covers that bring back memories, or someone shows stuff that they that make you realize you'd like to go out and get them too. Swamp Thing had a lot of great covers, even during what is basically this down period where no one was paying attention. I think they're a good form of communication for those of us who like comic books. And some people's hauls are always interesting. Anyway, they have lots of interesting things to say while they show you what they've got. Howler Mouse being the top of the heap there, or one of the people at the top of the heap. I always love his hauls. Constant Bronze Star, Todd. Suddenly blanking on your station name. I'm sorry. Gimpy. And solid ST4 string bend Shannon. All of those guys always have hauls I enjoy watching. So even if you're someone who thinks they don't like hauls, I would still try them every now and then. You might find some that are worth watching. Yeah, this one's Nancy Collins. It says Lady Jane. Scott Eaton. He's a good penciler now. Interesting to see earlier work by him. This is 1992. So I guess I followed Swamp Thing through the whole Alan Moore, and then and got reprints of all the earlier Bernie Wrightson reprints, and some just found old comics of Bernie Wrightson, and then Tom Sutton. That might be interesting. And then I stopped somewhere during the Rick Veitch run. I think more just because I wasn't going into comic book shops so much at that particular time. Because I remember liking his Swamp Thing. And now I'm into it in a big way through Scott Snyder, and now Soul. What's Soul's first name? It'll come to me later. So I got lots of these old, or sort of medium-age Swamp Things to delve into just to see what they're like. Oh, I like this cover. So I'll go through these pretty quickly. The thing is, this comic book shop has, for the most part, stopped selling back issues. They have some back issues that have just been sitting around a really long time, and I guess they're slowly just putting them into grab bags. And most of my shops around here, one of them has a dollar bin, and other ones don't even have that. One of them near me, 3 or 4 or 5 times a year, has 50% off sales, and that's when I get a lot of back issues there for reasonable prices. And of course there's online stuff. But then I discovered over in Vancouver, Washington, across the river from where I live, a great comic book shop called I Like Comics that had a back area that was basically the equivalent of a room filled with 50-cent bins. Probably, I don't know, 40 to 60, at least 40, probably over 60 long boxes full of comics available for 50 cents. Many of them in fine shape, some in bags, some not. Often the ones not in bags are in perfectly good shape. I don't know what that says. But so I was kind of excited to find this. I never even knew of its existence. It's a color Eclipse anthology, Eclipse Monthly. And I found 3 issues of it, 4, 5, and 7, I think. There's a Don McGregor, Gene Colan, Klaus Janson piece in here. This is on, very nice paper for the time, and the colors look really good, even though it's before computer coloring. So they're still probably using fairly basic techniques. But I'm quite psyched about this. I remember quite clearly Eclipse magazine, which was an early black and white anthology of what I think people called at the time ground level comic books. They weren't the big commercial comics, but they weren't, you know, the naughty underground comic books. They were just independent, interesting comic books. I think the creators kept their rights when they worked for Eclipse. This is quite interesting art style there. So I'm going to look for more of these Eclipse monthlies. I don't know how long it ran for, but I feel particularly interested in these anthology books from the late 70s and the 80s. So Zot was around back then, Scott McCloud, coming in March from Eclipse. I think it, in a way, was an early version of what Image is now. Not what Image was when it first came out, but you know, a place for people who were comic book professionals to do more idiosyncratic, personal, or just, you know, unique kinds of works and own what they did. So I was pretty excited about that, to get that for 50 cents. Now basically the grab bag comics I got basically cost me 50 cents a piece also, but that was a total crapshoot. Whereas here I had tons of comics to pick out from. I'd say a huge amount from the 80s and from the 90s and some from the 70s. Speaking of the 80s, I assume this is 80s, Epic Illustrated, but not in the large magazine format, but in some kind of prestige version. I didn't know they did this. Maybe it was just a one-shot. I don't know. Oh, book 3. So maybe it was a limited series where they, and I don't know if these are reprints from the original Epic or something new. Is there a date on here? So yeah, it's got Alien Legion, which I definitely remember from Epic. I feel like Alien Legion was also coming out from a different comic book company at the time. And now I think Dark Horse reprints Alien Legion. So part of me will say to myself, why don't you just buy 50-cent comics and then get things that you really want from the current stuff in trades? That would be very economical, give you lots of great reading. So here I dug up a bunch of Prometheus, unfortunately not completely in consecutive order, but starting with number 2. I know I owned most of these at one point. I don't even remember giving them away, but I definitely don't have them. And it feels even more interesting now that we've seen where J.H. Williams has gone, to see sort of the beginnings of his fame. People were pretty blown away, I think, by Promethea art at the time. So I've got number 2 of that. Number 3. It's exciting just to see the variety of the covers here. For anyone who doesn't know, Promethea was written by Alan Moore and drawn by J.H. Williams. And it was basically about a kind of mystical powered superheroine, but it totally twisted everything around and played with the genre in all kinds of wild ways, and became quite psychedelic, and if I remember correctly, weirdly sexual. I think maybe Promethea got sexually involved with a much older man, which I kind of see as maybe an Alan Moore fantasy, or maybe a reality that he was experiencing. So I've got 2, 3, 4, and then I skip to 6. And 7, just wonderful covers. And here's a really unusual cover. Goes that way. That is number 11. So I'm going to have to fill in the rest of this Promethea stuff. I think they're about to release a Promethea hardback that's an unusual, a hardback shaped like this so that each double-page spread can show up properly. That would be very tempting too. But these look very nice in the regular comic book form. And then I found a bunch of Nexuses, which is a character that I'm kind of obsessed with. It's often very good, and it's the art, whenever it's by Steve Rude, which is one of the co-creators, and usually the art's by him, is amongst my favorite comic book art of all. So I found all these a bunch of one-shots and limited series of Nexus that the creative team did at Dark Horse in the early 90s, I think, early to mid 90s. This was a crossover with Madman, who was maybe one of the bigger stars at Dark Horse in the 90s, the Steve Allred character. The back has all these quotes like you would get in a novel where all these critics are saying how great it is. Harlan Ellison, Alex Ross, Overstreet, Chris Claremont, Maggie Thompson at the Comic Buyer's Guide. But I read this one. The art's great, but it's awful. They're just trying to be funny no matter what, with no plot at all. And to me, it wasn't funny at all. So that's kind of unfortunate. It might have been, you know, Nexus always had a mix of a light tone and a dark tone, but it might have been trying to do something. You know, it wasn't written by Mike Allred, but it might have been trying to do something that was more like Madman, which I think was full of pop references. So this one has a lot of talk about Elvis, and this weird warped version of Michael Jackson shows up. And there's even a character called Jack Kirby, or called Kirby, who seems to just manage the dump on this planet, if I understand, or the sewage system on the planet Yilum, where Nexus lives. And then there was this one shot. I think it's a one shot. It seems to say GodCon 2, and I don't know what that's about at all. Hopefully it will be better than the Madman one. And then I got parts of 2 miniseries, so I'll have to search out the rest. Nexus Executioner Song, 1 of 2, 1 of 4, 2 of 4, and I thought I had 3 of those. Huh. Yeah. Then I have 3 of the next one, which is also a 4-part one. This one in black and white, which actually looks quite good. So I'll get to experience some black and white Steve Rude. It's called Nightmare in Blue. So it would be nice in a way if there was color in a story that has color in the title. But anyway, it's a black and white. Maybe they were trying to save money. I have a feeling that Nexus has only been popular for brief periods of time, and then is more of a, you know, critical favorite, if you will. So I have 1 of 2, 1 of 4, 2 of 4, and 4 of 4 of this Nightmare in Blue. So I have 1 to find of that. Then I got Nexus: The Origin, which I believe is kind of a retelling, a new angle on the source of Nexus's power. It's a beautiful book. I think I may still own a copy of this. If I do, I'll probably give this away to somebody. Beautiful book. And then this Alien Justice I loved. I already own it, and when I saw more copies of it, I just had to get it. Probably to give away to someone. This was a really, really good Nexus story. So I have it was 3 oversized comic books. And then the first issue of the rebooted Return of the New Gods, which came, you know, a couple of years after Jack Kirby's run on it ended. His 11-issue run of New Gods, which might be amongst the best comics ever made. Here's a Jack Kirby cover. I remember seeing this cover as a kid, but, you know, seeing this cover in house ads in the comic books, but never seeing the comic book itself. So it was kind of exciting to finally pick it up for only twice the original cover price. It's actually, on the interiors, is drawn by Keith Geffen. Not in such a Kirby imitation mode as we sometimes see him. So that's kind of interesting that Kirby did a cover for him there. I think back in the 70s, Marvel used books like Marvel Premiere to do lots of science fiction-y and horror type of characters, just sort of maybe throwing out ideas at the wall. There was a lot of interesting stuff in there. I don't know if Wood God ever continued or ever appeared again. Things always reappear somewhere, don't they? So Wood God must have reappeared somewhere. And then I was kind of excited to pick up 4 issues of the Micronauts, starting with number 2. What I didn't notice while I was shopping is that it's the New Voyages. So it must have been a second series after the kind of more famous or more very popular series that was drawn by Christopher Golden, or Michael Golden. And when I glanced at it in the store, well, actually these were wrapped in old, almost sticky yellow plastic bags. And given that they're not too bad, they do have a bit of a smell. And I'm starting to think more and more that comics that have been stored too long in old bags will start sort of smelling a certain way. But they actually have art by Kelly Jones, who later became one of my favorite artists on Batman and Sandman and some other things. So it's kind of interesting, although I would like to find the Kelly Jones, the Michael Golden issues. So I have 2 through 5 of this series. It couldn't have come out that much later than the original Micronauts series, because these are 60-cent books. I'm sure the Micronauts were around during the 50-cent era. At some point during the 80s, the prices started going up pretty quickly they either started at 40 or at 50 in the early part of the 80s and went to 60 to 75 to... Did they hit 65? I think they went from 60 to 65 to 75. And I don't know if they did 95 cents for a while before they went up to $1. Much more expensive at the time, for $1.75 from First Comics. First was one of the major players in the wave of independent comic book, or smaller comic book companies that came out in the 80s with the rise of the comic shops and the direct markets, along with Eclipse that I showed you earlier, and Pacific Comics and a bunch of others. First had a lot of good stuff. They revived E-Man, and in doing so decided, I guess, to reprint the original E-Mans, which was this short run of comics from 1973 done by Charlton Comics. So how they got the rights for it, I don't know. So this is the reprint, I think, of the first issue of the Charlton E-Man. I actually, while I was there, picked up 3 or 4 of the first E-Mans, which are also drawn by Joe Staton, written by Martin Pascoe, whereas the original E-Man was written by Nicola Cuddy. But anyway, I gave those to... These friends of mine, for some reason, are obsessed by E-Man. They hardly know anything about comics, but the dad read an E-Man when he was a boy, and he's always obsessed about E-Man. And so whenever I find E-Man comics, I give it to them, and his sons love E-Man. It's their favorite hero. Lastly, I got a Camelot 3000, number 11. So I would love to recollect, because I owned all these in the 80s. July 1984 is when this one came out. I owned all of these in the 80s, and I would like to get them again. Great Brian Bolland artwork. So then, and I'm sorry for going on so long, hauls, I guess, tend to go on a long time. And this is less vloggy than I thought it would be. It's kind of impossible to talk about the comics you hold up, plus some more larger topic. But very exciting to me in there, also 50 cents, were a bunch of these Spirit magazines. The ones done by Kitchen Sink, I think from the late 80s and the early 90s. Kitchen Sink kind of took over from Warren magazines, who had published or reprinted the Spirit very nicely in the 70s. And these printed the Spirit on very nice white thick paper, at the same large magazine size that Warren had done it. And they also included little essays and cartoons, but current ones at the time by Eisner and let's see, doesn't look like this one does it, but some of them also serialized his graphic novels that he was doing at the time before they came out in hardback or paperback copies. There's some beautiful covers. Usually Eisner did new covers for them. I don't know if he did the coloring himself, but it looks like they were experimenting with watercolors. Again, this is kind of early days of, yeah, this one has one of his graphic couple of chapters of one of his graphic novels in the middle of it, along with the Spirit reprints. Life from Another Planet, Chapter 3. So this is cool stuff, and to find this in good condition, doesn't smell bad or anything, for 50 cents is pretty incredible to me. I think on eBay you can probably get them, for $5 or $3 to $5. I've actually seen them at some comic book stores for up to $30, which was just ridiculous to me. Yeah, so I got a bunch of those. Most of them have these wraparound covers. I don't know why more comics don't do wraparound covers. And yeah, so the owner of the store told me that they get new comics in that they put in their 50-cent section every week. So I had this picture in my mind. I could just every week go there and pick through some more comics. Why spend any other money? But I know I won't. I'm still enjoying my pull list and reading current comics and reviewing them. The showing things in a pull list is a fun way to share things, and reviewing things. And when I say review, I mean just throw out whatever thoughts you had when you read that book. Sharing your thoughts is also a fun thing to do, because who cares about your thoughts about comics except for us? And comparing thoughts, and it's useful listening to reviews because you really learn about other comics that you haven't had time to read or can't afford to read all of them. And certainly through all of this communication, I've started reading more and more current comics. It's definitely helped suck me deeper into current comics. I was already into them, but much deeper. So these actually are not from that. These are ones I bought earlier at a 50% off sale at the comic book store near me. But I was also excited to get more Spirit stuff. This one is also kitchen sink. I think after a while they stopped doing these ones and switched over to regular comic book size ones in color. Although this one is not in color, it's black and white, but it is 3D. And the 3D actually works really well on Will Eisner's, you won't be able to see anything without the glasses, but on Will Eisner's sort of famous, iconic splash pages. They really pop out at you. It doesn't work as well on all the small panels, because they packed a lot of small panels into these comics back then. But it's still really cool to have a 3D Will Eisner comic. I just can't tell you how tickled I am by that. And I got it. It's in good shape, and I got it very inexpensively. There's not, well, I guess some comic book stores think there is when they sell these things for $30, but in general it seems like you can pick up the Spirit, they're all reprints, Spirit, pretty cheaply. So there was also this series, I'm not sure who published it, Kitchen Sink also, that focused on the very earliest Spirit stories. What happened was Will Eisner did the Spirit for about a year and then was drafted into the Army and was gone for 4 years. And when he came back in 1944, late 1944 I think, was when the Spirit just got mind-blowingly good. So like the Spirit stuff from 1944 to 1951, I think, is mostly really amazing. But I am interested to see the origin years as they're selling it here. But there's kind of a middle period that, you know, from like 41 to 44 that are done completely by other artists and other writers. And they aren't nearly as good. And that's kind of tricky if you look at those DC archives of the Spirit. It's hard to tell which are the ones that are actually done by Will Eisner and which aren't. If you can get a hold of this is a nice color collection of just four of his best stories that they put out just before the horrendously bad Spirit movie. Actually, I shouldn't say horrendously bad because I never went to see it. It sounded so bad and it looked so bad in the trailers that I didn't want my image of the Spirit corrupted by it. Let's see. I'm totally off topic about comic book stores and halls, but no, this one is not it. But like this is an example, and this archive is from 1946. So you're pretty safe in 1946 to get pretty prime Will Eisner Spirit. Anyway, I was at that same 50% off sale, which was a while back now, but I don't think I've got to show these things. I was excited to find a bunch of the Warren who published Creepy and Eerie, published reprints of the Spirit, also with new covers by Will Eisner, in kind of a different style than those later ones, with very vivid colors. And these are the first way I encountered Will Eisner. And if you can pick these up, I think it's a good, and you're curious about the Spirit, it's a good way to experience them because of the large size pages, making you really be able to see the artwork well. And during the maybe 14 issues that Warren did, they cherry-picked all of the very best Spirit comics. Each one, or almost all of them, have one color insert with one color story, and then the rest are black and white stories, but with this very nice gray wash applied that really works well. I can't tell you how much I love these, actually. I'm so excited to have gotten them. They, I owned a lot of them, not all of them, when I was a teenager, and then, don't know, did I sell them all, or I don't know how I lost them. And then I bought them all again in my late 20s, and then I really lost them. I remember I carefully packed them all together. I was so excited that I owned all the Warren Spirits, and then I don't know if someone stole them from me, or in some move I just misplaced the box they were in. So hopefully I will hang on to these and find the rest of them. I think this was the very first Spirit comic I got. I found it in a smoke shop in Geneva, Switzerland. I was living there for a year. My whole family was when I was 14. And I couldn't find any comic books except for the Spirit in English. This one's interesting because it's colored by Richard Corbin. I just thought that was interesting, Richard Corbin and Will Eisner together. So I'm coming to the end of my haul. I also picked up this Will Eisner Quarterly, which they did for a while, which I assume is just, I'll have to look into it, just material from his graphic novels, although it mentions color section, the Spirit. So I'm not sure. But there was a period when there was a lot of Will Eisner work in the comic book shops. Less so now. But there is, I haven't seen the physical copies, although I only plan to buy it when it comes out in hardback anyway, a Rocketeer and Spirit team up, so I'm going to be pretty excited for that. So I veered from my original plan to make a vlog that was about hauls while doing a haul, to just doing a haul, to just talking about the Spirit. If you've lasted with me for 35 minutes, oh my God. Thanks for hanging out so long. And I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.